We don't want you here. Around the mid-19th century was when the Chinese workers started to come to the United States due to the gold rush, due to the Transcontinental Railroad, and this was all great during that time because Americans didn't need laborers for the railroads, and also there was enough gold to go around, so it wasn't a very big deal to have Chinese people come over to take advantage of the gold rush at that time. When the gold rush ended and the railroad work was done, there were a lot of Chinese men around, 27 men to like 1 Chinese woman. It was just a general sentiment of fear, and this led to the spread of yellow peril propaganda, as well as just saying that Chinese men were stealing jobs and they were raping women. And not long after, this led to the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. And this was probably one of the most notable acts for a lot of people to learn about, at least for Chinese Americans. I feel like this was the only act in American history that targeted like a specific group of people from a certain country, and it stuck around for a very long time. One of the biggest issues was not long after that came the Expatriate Act of 1907, and this decreed that any American woman that married a foreign citizen would lose US citizenship. And this applied to all foreign nationals, but this was particularly complicated for women who decided to marry Chinese men, because if she does that and she loses her citizenship and follows the Chinese citizenship, that meant that the Chinese Exclusion Act now applied to them. And if they decide to leave the country and they want to re-enter, the Chinese Exclusion Act will actually now apply to these women as well. This was obviously a very sexist ideology that, like, you know, if a woman is married, then she's essentially, you know, covered by her husband legally. And this was during a time when women couldn't even get their own credit cards after they got married. You know, they have to get it with their husbands and they share their credit. It was a very weird time, and this was just another part of how they just believe a woman's loyalty was to her husband, and so then of course her national loyalty would then also be to her husband's national loyalty. And so because of this, it further made Chinese men a little bit not so desirable during this time. To mix it with everything, there were also just interracial marriage bans. There were laws across the country called anti-miscegenation laws, where no mixed marriages, and this also applied to Chinese men as well. This all went on until I think the Loving versus Virginia landmark civil rights case of 1967 that essentially ended the bans on interracial marriages and ruled that it was unconstitutional. This kind of all sets the stage for how I feel like Asian Americans were viewed, particularly Chinese men, and how there's just general sense of we don't want you here, you know, especially with the Exclusion Act, and just you're not very desirable, especially with the yellow peril propaganda and all the other things that went along with it. The next few stories that I want to share are more recent events that really stuck out to me, and I think about these incidents, you know, a lot whenever a certain thing happens in my life that reminds me of how sometimes I feel like I'm a little ostracized, and well, at least when I feel like I am being targeted, and I just feel like as an Asian American, I feel that I am not wanted here. So the first incident is actually pretty close to home, but you know, a decade before I was born. This was the Vincent Chin incident, and a lot of people around here still remembers that since they were around during the 80s. And so he's Cantonese actually, just like me, and he was out with his buddies for a bachelor party before shortly before his wedding. I guess this was at a bar, at a club, and there were 2 white guys at a bar that was sitting right by them, and they were throwing racial slurs at them and pretty much just making fun of them, and they got into a scuffle. The 2 white guys got pretty injured, I think, in the incident. The party that Vincent Chin was with apologized, and they shortly left. Not long after they were gone, I think these 2 guys decided to look for them, and they spent about like almost like half an hour looking for them, and they found them at a McDonald's, and the stepson held Vincent Chin down while the stepdad pretty much took a baseball bat and bludgeoned him pretty much until his skull cracked open. There were 2 off-duty cops there at the time that saw the incident, and pretty much the stepdad was arrested on the spot and he was taken into custody, even though they were convicted in Wayne County Circuit Court by a judge by the name of Charles Kaufman. It was supposed to be second-degree murder, but it got downgraded to just manslaughter because of a plea bargain. They didn't have to serve any jail time, and they were just 3 years of probation, $3,000 of fines, and $780 worth of court costs. But obviously a lot of people made a big fuss about it, and the judge decided to come out and he was like, these aren't the kind of men that you send to jail. You don't make the punishment fit the crime, you make the punishment fit the criminal. It pretty much stated what the general sentiment was about, where I think at least where like Chinese people stand and where everyone else stood at the time during this era. I think the mother made a comment at the time that if the roles were reversed, would Vincent Chin get a lifetime imprisonment over this murder? And I do sometimes wonder about that. Would he have gotten the same treatment if it was him on the other side? I do wonder about that. But this was a very complicated time in Detroit's history. Around the 80s was when Japanese cars started to enter like full prominence in the auto industry here. A lot of people were losing their jobs, and I believe the stepdad, if not both the stepdad and the stepson, lost their jobs at Chrysler because of competition, and that was pretty much the hate that was directed towards Vincent Chin. Obviously, Vincent Chin was Cantonese and not Japanese, but I don't think they could tell, and it was shouted during the brawl that it's because of you that we lost our jobs. It sucks. It sucks that like other countries can come in and bring on their industry and start make a product that people are willing to buy, and for some reason this ends up being a us versus them. And it does remind me of 2008, when the auto industry was falling, and there were a lot of bumper stickers around that said, have you lost your job yet? Keep buying foreign. And we saw plenty of bumper stickers around, and we were pretty nervous that a Vincent Chin event would be happening again in Metro Detroit. Vincent Chin's incident definitely got brought up again, and a lot of people felt that sentiment again since it just wasn't that long ago. This does bring me to the next incident that I want to bring up. It's pretty fresh in my mind. It happened in April 2007. So the Virginia Tech shooting, as you probably remember, it was a Korean foreign exchange student that shot 32 students to death. I think one of the biggest concern a lot of us had at the time, and you see this in a lot of various news articles. And a lot of colleges, I think, had student newspapers that wrote about this at a time, where will there be anti-Asian sentiment due to this incident? Even at the time when they decided not to disclose which country he was from, they just said Asian. And I did read articles from my alma mater. There were students that were concerned, could it be Middle Eastern? Is it Chinese? A lot of people just had so many questions, because once they disclose what country this guy is from, then will that group of students get targeted for just general hate? Parents were also really nervous at the time. We were just all wondering. And once we saw the photo, we saw that he was East Asian. And then the next thing that came up was like, well, what kind of East Asian? And my parents were really nervous at the time, actually, because we know, like I said, Vincent Chin's event wasn't that long ago. Would we get blamed, a widespread blame on us because we happen to look like this one guy who did this one incident in another state through his own, personal issue and choice. And we're pretty nervous because there's always this sense of feeling like an outsider. It's all fine and dandy when we're keeping our head down and we're just doing all the getting the good grades and following what people are saying and following the rules. But when one person deviates, it sends this spark of hate, I feel like. And suddenly we get thrown with racial slurs and being told like to go back to our country, and we're really concerned. Luckily, I feel like we did not, at least as a family, get that feeling of anti-Asian sentiment due to the Virginia Tech shooting. I don't remember anything, and this was happening around early high school, I think, and I don't remember feeling like my fellow classmates was behaving a particular way towards me. So I was very thankful for that. I'm not sure, in other parts of the country where there are more Asians, if there are more like Asian Americans, if they felt this sentiment, but I didn't really feel it. And I just remember my parents being really concerned and really noticing what was going on and the developments of the story at the time. I'm not sure if this is something people think about often, but this is definitely something we as a family consider all the time. But moving on to the second shooting that I wanted to talk about, which was the UCSB one with Elliot Rogers back in May of 2014. So the only reason why I bring him up was because there was one thing he said that really stuck with me. Faux Asian men are disgustingly ugly, and white girls would never go for you. You're just butthurt that you were born as an Asian, so you lash out by linking these fake pictures. You even admit that you wished you were half white. You'll never be half white, and you'll never fulfill your dream of marrying a white woman. I suggest you jump off a bridge. It definitely felt very out of the blue. I do remember a lot of people were very fascinated with the shooting because he actually released a YouTube video with his manifesto. It was just a stream of just these thoughts that he had. But this one quote that he had is, I'm sure it was something probably that he was struggling with. I guess, I don't know. It was very out of the blue for me. And it made me wonder if that's really how a lot of other people thought about me. I'm not really sure what he was trying to go for here. It does feel like he was probably struggling with his mixed race identity. I think he was probably frustrated that maybe he wasn't getting the attention of, I guess, girls in general, and that he just felt like he deserved it. It was a very twisted way, though, to deliver this and really call out a whole race of people. But I don't know. I definitely don't feel this way. I definitely don't feel like I am, never going to be able to find, someone. It's very weird that like he would say like jump off a bridge, but like why? I'm not holding this white ideology as my pedestal. And so it was just another random incident where a whole race of people are being called out for something one person did and felt like he had to say it out loud to the world. But I do want to end with this. So I did find this wonderful collection of pictures on CNN, and it's like through like a fashion lens. He was investigating like physical spaces where Asian American men felt like they didn't really belong, whether it's, in the school cafeteria where you're bringing Asian food and people are making fun of you for it because of how it smells, as well as like classrooms where they'll never celebrate our heritage, or bedrooms lined with posters that they are our role models, but we don't really see ourselves in them. And then offices that reinforce the corporate bamboo ceiling. So the bamboo ceiling is of particular interest to me because I am now living in the corporate world, and I do see strides that companies are making to try and break all these ceilings for people, not just the bamboo ones, but like the glass ceiling, all these other ceilings. And I would like to see more progress, but I definitely see that we're making strides towards it. I would definitely like to cover this more. So I will be talking about the model minority myth in my next video and cover more about the bamboo ceiling there. But it's another space where we just don't feel as wanted as time goes on, as we move up the corporate ladder. And I would like to talk about a little bit more in another video. This is kind of all I have today. My wish, as always, is that we don't carry this on to the next generation and we don't make sweeping comments about a whole race of people over something one person has done. They might not even be from the same national origin. Just shouldn't be the stereotype that you put on for this one race of people that are made of so many different countries. I mean, not only is there, like my background of Cantonese and Chinese and being East Asian, but there's also, South Asian, Southeast Asian, Pacific Islanders. There's so many people that make up Asian American, and it really sucks when people make this wide brushstroke of what they think Asians are like, or attributing a tragedy towards one particular race. I definitely feel there's still work to be done in society, but I guess my only hope is we don't give it to the next generation that's coming into our society. So that's all I have today, and I will see you next time for Modern Minority Myth. Thank you. Bye.